Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dead Time Stories. I know many of you enjoy listening to these videos as you fall asleep. So before you drift off, I'd love for you to leave a comment letting me know where in the world you're tuning in from. And if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, now let's get comfortable, relax, and dive into tonight's story.
The rain had been falling for 3 days straight, soaking the earth until the dirt road turned to a thick, black sludge. Naomi could feel the mud tugging at her boots with each step as she made her way toward the house, a sprawling Victorian with its paint long peeled away, windows boarded in places, and a front porch sagging like an old man's jaw. Her grandmother's letter had been short, almost frantic in tone. "Naomi, the time has come. You must come to the house. There's no one else left." No one else left. The words had gnawed at her all through the long bus ride from the city, and they were still gnawing now as she crossed the yard. She pushed open the gate, its rusted hinges shrieking. A crow startled from the porch railing, wings slicing the air in a sharp burst. Naomi's coat was drenched, her hair clinging to her cheeks as she stepped onto the porch. Beneath her weight, the boards gave a long, low groan, and somewhere inside the house, she thought she heard the same sound, echoing. The door swung open before she could knock. Her grandmother, thin as a reed and with skin drawn tight over her cheekbones, stood there with a candle in her hand. "You took too long," she said, her voice trembling, not from age, but something else. Naomi stepped inside. The air was stale, thick with the smell of rain-soaked wood and something faintly metallic. The hallway stretched ahead, lined with family portraits, faces Naomi didn't recognize, their painted eyes following her as she passed. Her grandmother locked the door behind them, bolting it twice. "They're close tonight," she whispered. "Who?" asked Naomi. Her grandmother's gaze darted toward the darkened end of the hall. "The hollow ones. You'll hear them before you see them. If you hear them, don't look." Naomi gave a short, nervous laugh. "Is this some kind of—" A sound interrupted her, faint, distant, but enough to make the hairs on her arms lift. It was like the creak of a floorboard, drawn out and hollow, as if the sound itself came from inside the walls. Her grandmother's face tightened. "They've already know you're here." The candle flickered, shadows spilling like ink across the wallpaper. Somewhere beyond the hall, something shifted. Not footsteps, more like a slow dragging, as though something was being pulled along the floor. Naomi's chest tightened. "What are they?" Her grandmother reached for her hand, squeezing so hard Naomi winced. "They're not living, not dead, not even ghosts in the way you think. They want to wear you, Naomi, like a coat." The dragging sound came again, closer now with a faint wetness to it. "Upstairs," her grandmother whispered urgently. "We'll talk there." They moved quickly, the candle's light bobbing as they climbed the staircase. Naomi glanced over her shoulder once and froze. At the far end of the hall, something had emerged from the shadows. It was tall, impossibly thin, its head tilted in an unnatural angle. Its skin, or what she thought was skin, looked stretched, as if it had been pulled over a frame too large for it. And it was smiling. The candle went out. Naomi gasped, but her grandmother's grip yanked her into the darkness above. Naomi's boots struck each step with a hollow thud, her free hand brushing the damp wall for balance as they climbed. She could still see the thing at the end of the hall in her mind's eye, that impossible, skeletal grin fixed in place like a cracked porcelain mask. They reached the top landing. Her grandmother pushed open the nearest door, shoving Naomi inside and locking it behind them. The room smelled faintly of lavender, though the scent was drowned out by the musty odor of age. Heavy curtains were drawn tight over the windows, and a single oil lamp flickered on the desk. Her grandmother crossed the room, her thin frame casting spindly shadows on the walls. "They've been coming more often," she said, her voice low. "Every night now. They're getting braver." Naomi tried to steady her breathing. "I don't understand. What are they? And why would they want me?" Her grandmother sank into a chair, the springs creaking under her slight weight. "They're from the hollows beneath this place. Not the basement, deeper, older. Before the house was here, before the ground was even ours, there was something wrong here. My grandmother used to say the land remembers what's buried in it. Sometimes it gives it back." Naomi swallowed hard, staring at her grandmother's trembling hands. "And they take people?" Her grandmother corrected. "They wear people, like trying on a body. They pull you out and slip themselves in, and you fade." Before Naomi could respond, a noise rose from the floor beneath them. It was faint at first, a distant shuffling, but it grew. Slow, deliberate steps that didn't quite match the rhythm of walking. Then came the sound of breath, ragged and wheezing, like air being dragged through a narrow pipe. Her grandmother's head jerked toward the door. They found the stairs. Naomi's skin prickled, a cold sweat forming at the back of her neck. "Can't we just leave? The bus?" "It's too late to leave tonight," she said firmly. "Once they're on you, they follow, even in the open." She rose, crossing to the wardrobe. From the back, she pulled out a small wooden box, its surface carved with symbols Naomi didn't recognize. "Take this," she said, thrusting it into Naomi's hands. It was heavier than it looked, the wood warm to the touch. The floorboards outside groaned, long and drawn out. Naomi froze, clutching the box. Her grandmother blew out the oil lamp, plunging them into darkness. "Don't make a sound," she whispered. The handle of the bedroom door rattled once. Then it began to turn.
The faint click of the latch made Naomi's stomach twist. She could feel her grandmother's hand grip her forearm in the dark, steady but unyielding. The door eased open with the slow patience of something that knew there was nowhere to run. The smell that drifted in wasn't rot exactly, but something older, like damp soil that had been sealed away for decades. A shape filled the doorway. Naomi's eyes strained against the dark, but she could only make out fragments, a silhouette too tall for the frame, fingers grazing the wood as though savoring the texture. It stepped inside without a sound. Her grandmother leaned close to Naomi's ear. "Don't breathe loud. Don't move." The figure moved further into the room, its head turning in small, unnatural jerks. There was a faint sound beneath its movements, a whispering, not words, but the dry rustle of something shifting inside an empty space. Naomi's throat burned with the need to swallow, but she forced herself still. The thing stopped. She could hear it drawing in air, slow and deliberate, like it was tasting the room. Then, so faint she thought she imagined it, came a wet stretch like fabric being pulled too tight. Her grandmother's nails pressed into her skin, a warning. The creature took one more step. It was so close Naomi could sense the air moving against her cheek, a breath that didn't belong to anything human. And then it turned toward the wardrobe. It lingered there for what felt like hours, running its elongated fingers across the wood. She could hear the soft tap of its nails against the carved surface. Finally, it moved toward the door again. The boards barely creaked as it crossed the room, but the whispers didn't stop. They trailed after it like threads caught in the air. The door closed. Naomi released a shaky breath. Her grandmother's hand slipped from her arm, but her voice was as firm as stone. "That was a scout. They never come alone." Naomi's blood ran cold. "You mean—" Her grandmother moved to the window, pulling the curtain back just enough to peek outside. Lightning flashed beyond the glass, and for the briefest moment Naomi saw the yard below, black with rain but alive with movement. Figures, half seen, stood scattered among the trees, too many, all of them facing the house. Her grandmother let the curtain fall. "They know you're new." Naomi's hands tightened around the wooden box. "What's in this?" "Your only chance. If they get in, it'll buy you a way out, but remember, once opened, it can't be closed again." A sound erupted from downstairs, a loud, splintering crack. "They're inside." The noise downstairs wasn't just wood breaking, it was wood giving way, like something had pushed through the frame of the front door without bothering to open it. Naomi's breath came faster despite herself, the weight of the wooden box heavy and hot in her hands. Her grandmother crossed the room in quick, precise steps and pulled open a narrow door Naomi hadn't noticed before. Inside was a cramped staircase leading upward into darkness. "The attic," she whispered. "It's the highest point in the house. They'll check it last." The thought of being trapped up there made Naomi's chest tighten, but she followed. The stairs groaned under their weight, and every sound felt like an invitation to whatever had entered below. From the darkness beneath, Naomi could hear the house breathing. It wasn't the storm outside, it was deeper, resonating through the floorboards, a slow in and out rhythm that did not belong to the living. They reached the top. Her grandmother pushed her inside the low-ceilinged attic and closed the hatch behind them, leaving only the thin beam of a storm lantern flickering on the floor. The smell of dust and mothballs, but under it all, there was that same damp, earthen scent Naomi had caught downstairs. The rain hammered the roof overhead, masking some of the noise below until a scream cut through it. Naomi froze. It was distant but sharp, the voice unrecognizable. It wasn't her grandmother's, and it didn't sound like anyone she'd ever known. It was wrong, too stretched, too high, like it had been pulled from something not meant to speak. Her grandmother's eyes were fixed on the attic door. "They're calling to you now. Don't answer." Another sound followed the slow scrape of something climbing the stairs. Each movement was deliberate, as if savoring the climb. Naomi swallowed. "How do they know my name?" "They don't need to. They'll wear it when they find you." The scraping stopped. Silence. Then 3 slow knocks on the attic hatch. Naomi's pulse pounded in her ears. Her grandmother whispered something under her breath, the words quick and sharp, like they were cutting through the air. The knocks came again, louder this time. Then the voice, a perfect imitation of her mother's, soft, pleading. "Naomi, it's me. Open the door, please." Naomi's grip on the wooden box tightened until her knuckles ached. She knew her mother was 2 states away, alive and nowhere near this house, and yet the voice had the warmth, the cadence, the exact tremble she remembered from childhood. The lantern flickered, once, twice, and went out.
The darkness in the attic was thick and absolute, swallowing even the faint shapes Naomi's eyes had begun to adjust to. She could hear her own breathing, shallow and fast, and beside her, her grandmother's slower, steadier inhale. The voice came again, softer now, but with a thread of urgency woven through it. "Naomi, please! They're hurting me!" Every muscle in Naomi's body screamed to move toward the hatch, to open it just enough to see, but the memory of that tall, grinning thing at the end of the hallway clamped down on her instincts like a vice. Her grandmother's whisper was barely audible. "They'll use every voice you've ever trusted. Don't let them in." The hatch handle twitched. Naomi held her breath. The sound that followed wasn't metal scraping wood. It was softer,
wetter, like fingertips without nails pressing and dragging along the wood grain. She could hear them feeling for a way in. Something shifted in the air, a faint movement behind them. Naomi spun, but there was nothing, only stacks of old trunks covered in a fine gray film of dust. She turned back just as the handle began to turn. Her grandmother moved with startling speed for her age, pressing her palm flat against the hatch and whispering in a language Naomi didn't know. The handle stopped mid-turn. Silence pressed in like a held breath. Then, 3 sharp answering knocks, but not from the hatch, from inside the attic walls. Naomi's stomach dropped. "They're in here!" The walls shuddered, dust raining down from the ceiling beams. A low, resonant hum began to seep through the boards, vibrating in Naomi's bones. It wasn't sound. It was something deeper, something she felt under her skin. Her grandmother's eyes darted to the box in Naomi's hands. "If they break through, open it." "What's inside?" Naomi asked again, her voice cracking. Her grandmother didn't answer. The hum grew louder, more urgent, and then the boards along the far wall began to bulge outward, bending as though something massive was pressing from the other side. The first splinter cracked free. Naomi's heart slammed against her ribs. "Now?" Her grandmother's gaze locked with hers. "Now." Naomi fumbled with the latch, fingers slipping against the warm wood. The lid gave way, and something inside exhaled. The breath that poured from the box wasn't air. It was colder than ice, heavy, and carrying with it a scent Naomi couldn't place at first. Then she knew, the metallic tang of blood, faint but undeniable, mixed with something older like scorched stone. It rushed past her face, snuffing out whatever dim light the storm outside had offered. The attic became darker than dark, the kind of black that seemed to press against her eyes. From the far wall came a sudden stop. The bulging boards stilled, the hum cut off mid-vibration. Then, faint at first, but swelling into a roar, came a chorus of voices, hundreds of them wailing in tones that made Naomi's teeth ache. They weren't words, not exactly, but a jagged sound that tore at the edges of thought. The air in the attic shifted. It felt like the temperature dropped 30 degrees in an instant. Naomi's breath came out in sharp clouds she could see. Her grandmother's hand clamped on her wrist. "Don't look, Naomi, no matter what you hear." The voices changed. Now they were inside her head, each one slipping into a memory, twisting it. She heard her father's laugh turn into a rasp, her best friend's voice thicken and drag. She felt the tug of something in her chest, like a thread being pulled from deep within her. There was movement, fast, skittering, circling them. Whatever was outside the walls was inside now. She could feel the floorboards dipping under the weight of something moving just beyond reach. The box in her lap vibrated faintly, and she realized the carvings along its edges were glowing, not with light, but with something her eyes struggled to focus on, shapes shifting and reforming every time she blinked. The wailing rose to a pitch that seemed to pierce straight into her skull, then cut off entirely. Silence. Naomi's ears rang, her pulse a hammer in her throat. And then a voice, low, clear, and nothing like the others, spoke from the blackness directly in front of her.
Who opened the gate? Her grandmother's grip on her wrist tightened until Naomi winced. Close your eyes. But Naomi couldn't. Even in the dark, she felt the presence leaning closer, its breath not cold, but hot now, carrying the smell of scorched wood. One of you owes me. I've come to collect.
Naomi's grandmother didn't flinch. Her voice, when it came, was steady but threaded with something Naomi had never heard before. Guilt. "It was me," she said. "I made the bargain." Naomi's throat tightened. "What bargain?" But her grandmother didn't answer her. She spoke into the darkness instead. "You said you'd keep them away. You promised they'd never cross the threshold." The voice rumbled, low and amused. "I kept them away for 50 years. A debt that long will never be paid in whispers." The floorboards creaked, slow and deliberate, as if something massive was moving toward them. Naomi could feel the weight of it in each step. Her grandmother's grip loosened on Naomi's wrist, and for a moment she thought she was letting go. But then her grandmother shoved the box back into Naomi's arms. "You have to leave. It's the only way you'll live." Naomi's pulse spiked. "Leave? Where? The house is surrounded." The voice cut in. "She won't leave, but you still have marrow worth taking." Her grandmother stepped forward into the black, putting herself between Naomi and the presence. The air rippled around her like heat over asphalt. "Take me," she said. Naomi's breath caught. "No!" "Oh, I will," the voice replied. There was a sudden rush of movement, faster than Naomi could track. The sound that followed was wet, heavy, final. She felt the air being pulled inward, as though something had just inhaled the room itself. Her grandmother's body crumpled to the floor. Naomi froze, every instinct screaming to reach for her, but she couldn't make herself move. The presence was still there, and she knew if she tried, it would take her too. The voice came again, closer now, almost beside her ear. "Run, little one, but remember, the hollow ones follow what they've tasted." And then the attic hatch blew open with a violent crash, cold, rain-laced wind flooding the room. Something seized Naomi's ankle. Naomi screamed and kicked wildly, her boot connecting with something that felt solid and impossibly soft, like flesh over water. The grip on her ankle loosened, but not before a coldness seeped into her skin, racing up her leg like ice in her veins. She scrambled backward, clutching the boss to her chest. The open hatch yawned like a black mouth in the attic floor, rain-slick air rushing up from below. There was movement in the dark beneath, shapes shifting against the dim flicker of lightning outside. She caught glimpses of them in the brief flashes. Limbs too long, faces that didn't match their proportions, smiles stretched far beyond human. The presence that had spoken to her was gone, or maybe it had simply retreated far enough to let the hollow ones take its place. Naomi's pulse roared in her ears. She looked toward her grandmother's body, lying still on the attic floor. The thought of leaving her there made something inside Naomi twist, but she knew, on some bone-deep level, that her grandmother wasn't in that body anymore. The hollow ones were climbing. She could hear the sound of them, hands slapping wetly against the wood, nails or claws or something clicking as they gripped the edges of the hatch. The first head rose into view, its face smooth where eyes should have been, mouth opening in a slow, deliberate arc to reveal teeth far too human. Naomi's breath came ragged, her fingers tightening around the box until her nails dug into the carvings. The warmth it had held before was gone. Now it was cold, like the wood had been soaking in ice water. One of the hollow ones pulled itself fully into the attic, unfolding its body in jerky motions, as though remembering how joints worked. Behind it, more hands began to appear, grasping the edges of the hatch. She backed toward the far wall, knowing it was useless, knowing there was nowhere left to go. Lightning lit the room for an instant, and in that flash, she saw them all. A dozen pale forms crawling toward her, each wearing a face she recognized. Neighbors, school friends, people long dead, faces worn like masks over something that was not human.
The box in her arms thrummed once, sharp enough to make her gasp, and then the carvings began to move.
The carvings rippled under her fingertips, as if the wood were suddenly made of liquid. Shapes twisted and folded in on themselves, forming symbols Naomi didn't recognize, but felt in the pit of her stomach. The hollow ones paused mid-crawl, their heads turning toward the box in perfect, eerie unison. The faceless one at the front tilted its head, the smooth skin where its eyes should have been pulling taut as it looking. The thrumming in the box deepened, vibrating against her ribs. Her instincts screamed at her to throw it open again, but she remembered her grandmother's warning. Only once. She had already opened it, and whatever had come out before, it had taken her grandmother. The first hollow one took a step closer. Its movements fluid now, almost human. Its mouth opened wider, teeth pressing against lips too thin to contain them. A whisper rose in her ears, not from the creatures, but from the box itself. It was fast, urgent, a language that was more sensation than sound. Her chest tightened, her vision narrowing as the symbols began to burn faintly against her palms. Another lightning flash, and, for an instant, she saw something impossible. The attic wasn't there. She was standing in a vast, black expanse, the hollow ones frozen around her like wax figures, their pale forms bending under the weight of an unseen wind. And far in the distance, a figure stood watching. It was the voice from before, the one that had claimed her grandmother. She couldn't see its face, but she knew it was smiling. "You opened my gate twice," it said, its voice rolling across the void like thunder. "Now you don't get to choose what comes through." The attic slammed back into place, the noise of the rain and the creak of the floorboards rushing in all at once. The hollow ones began moving again, faster now, their hands reaching for her. The box in her arms burned. Without thinking, Naomi screamed, and the box answered. The scream that tore from Naomi's throat wasn't entirely her own. It layered with something older, deeper, as if the box had found her voice and braided it with another. The sound cracked through the attic like a thunderclap. The hollow ones were coiled instantly. Not in fear, Naomi could feel they didn't know fear, but in recognition, as though they'd been touched by something they hadn't expected. Their bodies jerked in strange, unnatural spasms, limbs folding in ways that made her stomach twist. From the open hatch below came a rush of movement. More of them were coming, the sound of hands and knees slapping wet wood echoing up the narrow space. The symbols carved into the box flared brighter, twisting in constant motion under her skin. Naomi felt something pulling at her from inside the wood, not like before when the presence had escaped, but in reverse, as if the box wanted her. "No," she whispered, tightening her grip. The whispering from within surged, drowning out the rain and the sound of the hollow ones closing in. Images flared in her mind. Her grandmother as a young woman, standing in this very attic, holding the same box, but she was alone. She was speaking to it, bargaining, and she could hear the exact words. "Keep them from crossing, and you may have me when my bloodline is done." Naomi's stomach lurched. This wasn't random. It wasn't chance. Her grandmother knew Naomi would come here. The hollow ones moved in. Their faces shifted with every step, flickering through memories that weren't theirs. Her mother's eyes, her childhood friend's smile, her own face, pale and slack like a corpse. The box's voice cut through them all. "One of you must enter." Naomi's hands shook. "Enter what?" The carvings burned against her palms, and she understood, not through words, but through the weight of the knowing. To shut the gate again, something living had to take her grandmother's place inside the box. And the hollow ones were almost on her.
They closed in from all sides, their movements unnervingly silent now, as if they feared startling her into choosing too soon. The one nearest her reached out, its hand pale and impossibly long, fingertips curling like hooks. Its borrowed face was that of her grandmother, not as she'd last seen her, but from decades ago, eyes bright, smile soft. "Naomi," it said in her grandmother's younger voice, gentle and coaxing. "It's not so bad. You'll never feel the cold again. You'll never be alone." Her throat constricted. It was so close to real, the cadence of every word perfect. But the warmth in the voice didn't reach the glassy stillness in those stolen eyes. The box pulsed sharply in her arms, a reminder. From the hatch below, she heard them, more hollow ones climbing, more hands finding purchase. They'd fill the attic soon. There would be no way out. She thought of running, of forcing her way past the nearest one and hurling herself down the stairs, into the rain, into the woods beyond. But the voice in her head, low, steady, certain, whispered, "They'll follow. They'll always follow." Her gaze darted to her grandmother's body, lying crumpled on the floorboards. Naomi could feel the pull of the choice tightening around her like a noose. She could climb inside the box, seal it, and they'd be trapped away again. But she wouldn't come back out. A hollow one stepped closer. Its face shifted into her own, smiling just slightly, teeth bared. "We'll be together," it said, and hearing her own voice echo in the dark nearly broke her. Her fingers tightened on the box. The wood was burning her now, the carvings branding themselves into her skin. She could smell it, the faint, bitter scent of singed flesh. Her heartbeat thundered. She had seconds, maybe less. The hollow ones reached for her all at once. Naomi lurched backward until her shoulders hit the slanted wall of the attic. The impact jarred the box in her arms, and for a split second, the carvings flared so bright they seemed to sear the air. The hollow ones froze mid-reach, their limbs suspended unnaturally, as if the light had locked their joints. Their faces flickered through a storm of identities, dozens, maybe hundreds, all shifting too quickly for her eyes to track. The box's voice came again, no longer a whisper, but a deep, resonant command inside her skull. "Choose." Her pulse slammed in her ears. "No," she breathed, but even she could hear the tremor in her voice. "Then give me one of them." Her breath caught. One of... But she understood almost immediately. The box didn't care who entered, only that something living took the place her grandmother had filled. The hollow ones began to move again, slow and deliberate, surrounding her in a tightening circle. Their bodies bent unnaturally low, shoulders hunching, as if they were ready to pounce. Naomi's mind raced. If she chose one of them, what would happen? Would it destroy them? Contain them? She thought of her grandmother's bargain, of 50 years of protection. Would the cycle just start over again, with her as the keeper? The nearest hollow one's face shifted back to her grandmother's, the young version, eyes wide and pleading. "Naomi, don't let them have you, please." The sound of her voice wavered just slightly, but it was enough. The tiny crack in the perfect imitation told Naomi exactly what to do. She flung the box open. The air imploded. The hollow one shrieked, a piercing, layered sound that made her vision blur. Wind tore through the attic, pulling at everything. Dust, splinters, fragments of the room, toward the open box. The one closest to her stumbled forward, claws digging into the floorboards, its face unraveling like wet paper.
The thing's skin peeled back in strips, revealing a surface beneath that wasn't bone or muscle, but something smooth and dark, like polished obsidian. It fought against the pull, clawing at the boards so hard the wood splintered under its grip. Naomi could feel the suction too, the invisible current pulling at her hair, her clothes, tugging her toward the yawning black inside the box. The carvings burned hotter in her hands, the heat searing her palms until the smell of scorched skin mingled with the attic's dust. The hollow one's body convulsed as the box drew it in,
Its stolen faces flickered in a frenzy, her mother, her grandmother, her own, before tearing away entirely. In the next instant, its form snapped into the darkness, vanishing without a sound. The others staggered back, but the box's hunger was relentless. 2 more were caught in the pull, their bodies twisting and distorting as they were dragged across the attic floor. Their limbs jerked in unnatural directions as they were swallowed whole. Naomi's vision pulsed at the edges. The wind wasn't just pulling them, it was pulling her. Every muscle in her body strained to keep hold of the box without being dragged in with it. Lightning flashed through the rain-slicked hatch below, and for an instant she saw more hollow ones retreating into the shadows, fleeing as if something worse than themselves had been unleashed. Her arms trembled. The carvings were almost too hot to hold, and her fingers were beginning to go numb. The pull intensified, the attic groaning under the force of it. Then, from somewhere deep inside the box, that same low voice rumbled, not triumphant, but almost satisfied. The debt is paid for now. The pull stopped so abruptly Naomi nearly fell forward into the black. The box's lid slammed shut with a sound that echoed through her bones. The attic was silent again, save for the rain. But her hands wouldn't let go of the box. Naomi's fingers were locked in a rigid grip, muscles frozen as if the wood had rooted itself into her skin. The attic was quiet now, too quiet. No more dragging sounds from below, no creaks on the stairs, just the steady drumming of rain on the roof, muffled and distant, like it belonged to another world entirely. Her grandmother's body lay where it had fallen, but something about it was different now. The skin seemed pale in a way that had nothing to do with death, almost translucent, as if she were made of wax left too long in the sun. Naomi had to look away. She shuffled toward the attic hatch on shaky legs, the box still clamped in her grasp. Every step was deliberate, cautious, half expecting another pale hand to reach up from the dark below. But when she leaned over and looked down, the staircase was empty. She climbed down slowly, her boots thudding softly against the wooden rungs. The hallway below was untouched, save for the deep gouges in the walls and floor where the hollow ones had passed. The air still carried that faint earthen scent, but weaker now, diluted by the wet draft blowing in from the broken front door. Naomi moved toward it, drawn by the idea of open space, of being anywhere but in this house. Outside, the storm had begun to ease. The yard was still, the trees dripping with rain. For a brief moment, she let herself believe it was over. Then, the box in her hands gave a single, slow pulse, warm this time, not burning. A whisper curled into her mind, soft and deliberate. They will come again, and now you are the door. Her knees nearly buckled. She said no aloud, as if speaking it could undo the truth. But even as she stood in the doorway, breathing in the cold, damp air, she felt it, an invisible thread stretching out from her chest into the ground beneath the house. It wasn't over. It had only changed hands.
Naomi staggered out onto the porch, the boards slick beneath her boots. The rain had thinned to a mist, but the sky above still churned with dark, heavy clouds. She could feel the weight of the box pulling her forward, not physically, but like an unshakable awareness that wherever she went, it would follow. She thought of hurling it into the woods, letting it sink into the mud and vanish. But she knew, the way you know a nightmare will be waiting when you close your eyes, that it would find its way back. Maybe she'd wake up tomorrow with it in her bed. Maybe it would simply be in her hands again, and she'd never remember dropping it. The wind carried the faintest sound from the trees, not the hollow ones dragging shuffle. This was softer, something like humming. a tune she almost recognized from years ago. Her grandmother's voice. Naomi's heart clenched. She stepped off the porch into the wet grass, scanning the tree line. The sound was just beyond the first row of trunks, weaving through the dripping leaves like it was leading her somewhere. The box warmed again, a gentle pulse, as if it approved. "No," she whispered, tightening her grip. But the humming shifted into words, her grandmother's exact tone, exact rhythm. "Naomi, I left something for you. You'll need it." The rain ticked against the leaves overhead. The words repeated, softer, fading into the rustle of branches. Naomi took a step toward the trees before she realized it. She froze, forcing herself to breathe. The mud sucked at her boots, the smell of wet soil heavy in the air. If she followed, she knew she might not come back, but if she didn't, she might never know what her grandmother had meant. The box pulsed again, stronger this time, and she thought she saw movement deep between the trunks, something pale watching, waiting. Naomi's breath clouded in the damp air, each exhale sounding too loud in the stillness. The pale shape between the trees hadn't moved, but she couldn't shake the feeling it was leaning closer, even from that distance. Her grandmother's voice, soft, coaxing, slipped through the air again. "It's safe, Naomi. Just a little further." The mud sucked greedily at her boots as she took another step toward the tree line. The box grew heavier in her arms, not pulling her forward now, but anchoring her, as if reluctant to cross into whatever lay beyond the grass. A cold realization hit her. The box wasn't trying to lead her, it was trying to hold her back. The pale figure shifted. It wasn't pale skin at all. It was wearing something, a thin, colorless hide stretched over its body, pulled so tightly that she could see the unnatural angles of its joints. Its head tilted in that same unnatural bird-like motion she'd seen before when the Hollow One had first appeared in the hall. Only now it smiled with her grandmother's face. The voice came again, perfectly imitated. "Don't you want to finish what she started?" Naomi's stomach churned. "You're not her." The thing didn't blink. Its mouth moved slower than the words it spoke, as though it was only guessing at how a human face should work. Her grip on the box tightened, heat blooming faintly beneath her fingers. The carvings began to hum again, not urgent this time, but steady, like a warning drumbeat. She stepped backward. The figure took one forward. And then, like water breaking over stone, she felt them. More shapes, just inside the tree line, standing still among the dripping leaves. She couldn't see their faces, but she knew they were all turned toward her. The Hollow Ones hadn't fled after all. They'd been waiting.
The mist between the trees seemed to thicken, curling around the pale figures until they were little more than ghostly outlines. But Naomi could feel their attention, sharp, hungry, patient in the way predators could afford to be when there was no escape. The one wearing her grandmother's face stepped forward again, the wet earth sucking at its bare feet. "You've taken her place," it said, the words slipping out too smoothly now, losing the human imperfection of breath and pause. "You belong with us." Naomi's pulse hammered in her throat. The box in her hands vibrated harder, the heat intensifying until her palms ached. She realized it wasn't only warning her, it was reacting to them. The figures deeper in the woods began to shift, not walking closer, but tilting their heads in unison, their bodies swaying faintly as if caught in a breeze Naomi couldn't feel. She caught glimpses of their stolen faces, smiles she knew didn't belong to them. One of them spoke, its voice overlapping with the others in a layered chorus. "The door is open now. We can wait forever." The box's carvings shifted beneath her grip, symbols folding over one another like turning gears. The hum deepened, and for a split second she felt something pulling outward from her chest, toward the trees, toward them. She took a step back toward the porch, heart pounding. The nearest hollow one mirrored her grandmother's frown perfectly. "Leave, and we will follow. Close the door, and you will join her." Naomi swallowed hard. "There's a third option," she said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her own voice. The swaying stopped. Every head turned toward her at once. She didn't know if the third option was something she could invent on the spot, or if the box had already decided what it would be. The carvings under her palms shifted again, almost impatiently, like a heartbeat speeding up. The hollow ones stood perfectly still now, a dozen pale forms poised at the edge of the yard. Even the one wearing her grandmother's face had gone motionless, as if her words had rooted them in place. The wind moved through the trees, rattling the wet leaves. Naomi could hear something beneath the rustle, a low, rhythmic sound, distant but steady, like footsteps. From the shadows between the figures, something else began to emerge. Taller than the rest, shoulders hunched beneath the weight of something invisible. Its head bowed so low, its chin nearly touched its chest. The others shifted aside to let it pass. Naomi didn't need to see its face to know who it was. The voice from the box, the one that had taken her grandmother, rolled into the clearing, not through the air, but inside her skull. "You called me. Will you finish what she began?" Naomi gripped the box tighter, but it didn't burn this time. Instead, it pulsed once, heavy and slow, like a held breath. "What happens if I say no?" she asked. The tall figure lifted its head. In the dim gray light, she saw nothing where a face should be, just a depthless black, as if the space behind it had been carved away entirely. "Then they will take you, and when they do, they will not stop with you." The hollow ones around it swayed again, anticipation shivering through their two long limbs. The carvings beneath Naomi's hands shifted one last time, forming a single, unmistakable shape. A doorway. And she knew, without being told, that whatever the third option was, it meant opening something far bigger than the box. Naomi's breath hitched. The carved doorway on the box seemed to pull her in, not physically, but in a way that made her mind feel unmoored, like if she stared too long, she might fall straight through it. The tall figure stepped closer, the mud sucking loudly at its feet. The hollow ones parted, forming a corridor of pale, swaying bodies, each one facing her with an identical predatory stillness. "The choice is yours," the faceless voice said. "Keep the gate closed and carry the debt, or open it and let the debt belong to everyone." Naomi's grip tightened. She didn't need it to explain. Closing the gate would mean becoming the warden, bound to the box, hunted forever,
keeping the hollow ones at bay for as long as she could. But if she opened it, she could already picture the consequences spilling far beyond this yard. A drop of rain hit the back of her hand, startling her. She hadn't realized the mist had thickened into a fine drizzle again. The wind carried the scent of wet soil and something else, something sharp, like the air before a lightning strike. The carvings heated under her fingers, almost eager. The box wanted to open. Naomi's jaw clenched. If I let you out, what happens to me? The tall figure tilted its head, a slow, creaking motion. You will be free. You will never see us again. It sounded true, and that was what terrified her. Her grandmother's voice, so faint Naomi almost thought she imagined it, whispered from somewhere deep inside her memory. The land remembers what's buried in it. Naomi took a step forward, boots sinking in the mud. All eyes, too many eyes, followed her. The box's hum deepened into a steady, thrumming beat. She could feel it sinking with her pulse. She set her thumb against the latch. The metal latch was slick beneath her thumb, rainwater mixing with the sweat from her palm. It trembled, not from the wind, but from something inside, pressing upward, ready to burst free the moment she allowed it. The hollow ones leaned forward in unison, their pale faces inches closer to the boundary where the yard met the trees. Their stillness was gone now. They swayed like branches in a storm, vibrating with anticipation. The tall figure stood perfectly still at the center, head tilted ever so slightly, its faceless gaze locked on her. Choose, it said. Naomi's thumb hesitated on the latch. She thought of her grandmother, her body lying cold in the attic. She thought of the bus ride here, of the life she'd had before she'd stepped through this rotting porch door. She thought of the faces she'd seen the hollow ones wear, neighbors, strangers, her own, and knew that even if she locked the gate forever, they would find her. They would wait. The rain thickened, pattering against the box in a quickening rhythm. Her breath fogged in the air. The carvings under her fingers shifted once more, the doorway flaring brighter in the dim gray light, as if urging her, now. Her heart hammered. She thought of the voice's promise, you will never see us again, and she knew what it meant. It meant she'd be free. It also meant the rest of the world wouldn't be. Naomi closed her eyes, her thumb pressed down. The latch clicked open. The air split apart with a sound like tearing fabric, deep and endless. Wind roared from the box, not outward, but inward, sucking the rain, the leaves, the cold air itself into its black center. The hollow ones surged forward, not to escape, but to be taken. Their bodies twisted, stretched, and vanished into the impossible dark. But the tall figure didn't move. It simply watched her, motionless, as the pull began to reach for her.
The wind clawed at Naomi, pulling her forward, step by step, her boots dragging furrows through the mud. The air was so cold now it burned her skin, her hair whipping across her face in violent lashes. The hollow ones were gone, every last pale shape swallowed into the black without resistance. But the tall figure remained rooted in place, the faceless void where its features should have been fixed on her. She dug her heels in, clutching the box, but the pull was relentless. The doorway carved into its surface now blazed like molten gold, so bright she couldn't look directly at it. The figure tilted its head, and for the first time it stepped forward. The suction from the box seemed to touch it. "Freedom always has a cost," it said, its voice cutting through the roar of wind. "You've chosen to pay in full." Naomi's grip slipped.
The mud gave way beneath her boots, and she was yanked forward so hard her teeth clacked together. The edge of the box's darkness loomed inches away, a depthless pit that made her chest seize just to look at it. And then the figure moved again, closer now, towering over her. One long, cold hand pressed against her shoulder, holding her in place with no effort at all. You must walk the door you've opened. The wind shifted, the pull lessened, but the box still gaped wide, the impossible darkness inside churning like a living storm. Naomi's lungs felt too small. Where does it go? The figure's head lowered until the faceless void was level with her own. Everywhere. And then it released her. Naomi staggered backward, boots slipping in the churned mud, but the box's pull no longer reached for her. Instead, the darkness inside it began to spill outward, not in a rush, but in slow curling tendrils, like ink unfurling through water. The tendrils touched the ground and sank into it, vanishing into the soil. The wind died, but the rain did not. It fell in a steady, deliberate rhythm, each drop sounding too heavy, too measured, as if the storm itself were listening. The hollow ones were gone, yet the yard did not feel empty. The space between the trees seemed deeper, the shadows thicker, like the night itself had moved closer. The tall figure stepped past her, each stride impossibly smooth despite the mud. As it reached the porch, it paused and turned its faceless head back toward her. You are the door now, but you've chosen to leave it open. They will come through, at first in whispers, then in waves. Naomi's throat was dry. Why not take me instead? Because they need a guide, and you will lead them without knowing you do. Before she could speak, the figure walked into the house. Its frame did not bend to the door's size, the world around it instead, swallowing it whole. The moment it vanished, the box snapped shut in her hands with a sound like a gavel striking wood. The carvings were still. The warmth was gone. But the thread she'd felt earlier, the one stretching from her chest into the ground, remained, stronger now. From the tree line came a faint, ragged breathing. Not one voice, but many. They had gone nowhere at all. They were simply waiting for her to take the first step. Naomi's grip on the box tightened until her fingers ached, but it no longer responded. No hum, no shifting carvings, just dead weight. The breathing from the trees was steady, patient. It rose and fell in uneven unison, like a crowd trying to mimic a single living thing. She could almost match the sound to the faint movement she saw deeper in the shadows, where the pale shapes shifted just enough to remind her they were real. Rain trickled down the back of her neck. She forced herself to look away from the tree line and back at the house. The front door still hung broken on its hinges, swaying slightly in the wind, the darkness inside seeming thicker than it had before. For a moment she considered running, leaving the box in the yard, walking until her legs gave out, hitching a ride to anywhere. But her grandmother's words, "Once they're on you, they follow," rattled in her head like loose nails. She wouldn't outrun them. She stepped back onto the porch, the wood groaning beneath her. The breathing from the trees quieted, as though the hollow ones were holding their collective breath. Inside, the house smelled different. The earthen rot was still there, but now it carried something sharper beneath it, a copper tang she recognized from the box's first breath. She found herself following it down the hall, past the wall of staring portraits, to the base of the staircase. A muddy footprint marked the first step, too large to be hers, too fresh to be her grandmother's. It led upward, into the dark. Naomi's pulse quickened as she stared at the footprint. The edges were crisp, the water in it still glistening in the faint light from the hall window. Whoever or whatever had left it was still inside, She shifted the box under one arm, her free hand gripping the banister. The wood was damp, as if the rain had reached this far into the house, but she knew it hadn't. Each step groaned under her weight as she climbed. The footprints continued up the staircase, but by the time she reached the landing, there were more of them now. Multiple sets, overlapping, some smeared as if their owners had turned in tight circles. The copper tang grew stronger. She knew what it was now. Blood. Her gaze was drawn to the end of the hallway. The attic hatch hung open, the pull-down ladder extended. Rainwater dripped from its edges, though the roof above was whole. And then she heard it, a faint tapping from above. Tap, tap, tap. Not hurried, not random, a pattern. She took a step closer. The tapping stopped, replaced by a soft voice drifting down from the attic. Her own voice. Naomi, bring the box up here. You forgot to close the door. Her stomach nodded. She hadn't said those words, but they sounded exactly right down to the cadence of her breath between sentences. The box in her arms grew heavier, the wood subtly shifting against her skin like it was straining toward the open hatch. From the dark above, her voice came again. Hurry, Naomi. They're waiting for you.
Naomi's legs locked. Every instinct screamed at her to turn and run, but her feet refused to move. The sound of her own voice from above felt like a hook lodged deep behind her ribs, tugging upward with each syllable. She clutched the box tighter, the carvings cold now, cold in a way that made her fingertips feel brittle, as though too much pressure would snap them. The attic hatch creaked. Something shifted above, slow and deliberate. A shadow moved across the faint sliver of light, spilling down from the open space, and Naomi realized with a sharp chill that it wasn't leaning down to look at her. It was leaning away, as if it were drawing something else up. The copper scent thickened, metallic and wet. She could almost taste it now. Her own voice spoke again, softer this time, coaxing. It's safe up here. No one will follow you. The box twitched in her arms. Not a vibration, not heat, but a sharp muscle-like contraction beneath the wood, like it was alive and trying to leap from her grasp. Her knees bent involuntarily, one foot landing on the first rung of the ladder. Then another voice, this one low and rough, cutting through the air from somewhere behind her. Naomi, don't. She spun. Halfway down the hall stood a figure in the shadows, drenched from the rain. It wasn't a hollow one. Its posture was too human, its breathing too uneven. Lightning flashed through the cracked front door, and for an instant she saw his face. It was her father, and she knew he was 2 years dead. Naomi's breath caught, the air in her lungs turning to ice. Her father's face was exactly as she remembered, creased from years of sun, eyes the same deep brown, but there was something wrong in the stillness of his expression. He didn't blink. Her grip on the box tightened. You're not him. The figure stepped closer, water dripping from his clothes, leaving dark spots on the warped floorboards. You think you know what's real, Naomi? His voice was deep, warm, familiar, and yet somewhere under the words there was that faint rustling she'd heard from the hollow ones. From above, her own voice cut in sharply. Don't you dare! He'll take it, and you'll never see me again. Naomi stood frozen between them. The box was getting heavier by the second. Don't listen to him. He's lying. Come up here now. Naomi's eyes darted between the two. Her father's double reached out a hand, palm up, just like he used to when she was a child and afraid of storms. You still have a choice.
but every step you take up there makes it harder to turn back. The box shifted again in her arms, a deep, impatient pulse that seemed to say, choose. The carvings under her palms began to writhe. Not the doorway this time, but something more chaotic, symbols breaking apart and reforming into jagged shapes she didn't recognize. Her father's voice lowered, almost a whisper. If you bring that box into the attic, you won't come back down. The attic hatch above groaned. Something was moving closer to the opening, slow, dragging movements like heavy fabric across wood. Her father's double took another step toward her. Give it to me. Her own voice from above snapped, louder this time. Don't you dare! He'll take it, and you'll never see me again. Naomi stood frozen between them. The box was getting heavier by the second.
The weight of the box was unbearable now, her arms trembling under it. Every heartbeat felt like it was sinking deeper into her bones, as though the thing wasn't just heavy, it was anchoring her to this choice. Her father's double kept his hand outstretched, rainwater dripping from his fingertips. Naomi, it doesn't have to be you. Give it to me, and I'll carry it instead. From above, her own voice called again, more insistent. He's lying. You know he is. He's not even supposed to be here. The ladder groaned as something unseen shifted its weight onto it, the first rung creaking under the strain. Naomi's chest tightened. Whatever was up there was coming down. Her father's double stepped closer. The rustling under his voice grew louder, like dry leaves being stirred in a windless room. If you go up, you'll join them. Do you want that? The box pulsed sharply once, like a heartbeat through her arms. For the briefest moment, she felt an image, not a thought, push into her mind. Herself in the attic, kneeling in darkness, faces circling her, their hands all reaching for the box. The creak of the ladder grew louder. Naomi's father, if it was him, spread his fingers wider. Naomi, give it to me now. Her own voice from above dropped to a whisper. Don't. Whatever you do, don't let him touch it. The box vibrated so violently she nearly dropped it. She had to choose, right now. Naomi's breath came in short, sharp bursts. Her arms burned from holding the box, but her fingers refused to let go, as though the wood itself had hooked into her muscles. The ladder creaked again, louder now, as something began to descend. A hand emerged first, pale and too thin, the skin stretched taut over bone. It gripped the rung in silence. Her father's double stepped closer, his voice tightening. Naomi, look at me. She did, and for a fraction of a second the warmth in his eyes flickered. Beneath it she saw a flash of something hollow and black. The rustling in his voice deepened. If you give me that box, you will walk away tonight. I swear it. From above, her own voice grew sharp, urgent. If you hand it over, he'll open it, and you know what happens then. The hand on the ladder shifted down another rung, its joints bending too far, the knuckles jutting like broken hinges. The box pulsed again, hot this time, sending a jolt through her chest. Another image burned into her mind. The front yard, the trees spilling over with hollow ones, their bodies pouring into the house like a flood. Her father's double extended his arm further. One choice saves you, the other ends everything. Her voice from above whispered, almost tenderly, Trust me, Naomi. The second hand appeared on the ladder. Whatever was coming down would be fully visible in seconds. Naomi's grip tightened. She stepped toward
Her father's double. The moment she moved, his expression shifted. Relief spread across his face. Too sudden, too practiced. His outstretched hand trembled slightly as she closed the distance between them, the box heavy and burning against her ribs.
Behind her, the thing on the ladder paused, as if sensing her choice. The wood groaned under its weight, a slow, deliberate stillness replacing the steady descent. Naomi stopped just short of her father's double, studying his face. The warmth in his eyes was there again, but now she could see the edges, like the seams of a mask stretched too tight. The rustling in his voice swelled in her head even without him speaking. "You'll be free, and I'll make sure the door stays shut." The box thrummed once, hard enough to rattle her teeth. It wasn't approval, it was a warning. From the ladder, her own voice hissed, "Naomi, don't!" In that instant, she remembered her grandmother's words the night she arrived. "They want to wear you, Naomi, like a coat." Her stomach turned cold. This wasn't about carrying the box for her. It was about taking her. The mask of her father's face slipped just for a second, revealing something beneath. A long, narrow grin stretching where no mouth should be, teeth like carved bone glinting in the dim light. He lunged for the box. Naomi twisted at the last second, the box jerking out of his reach. His hand grazed her arm, ice cold, the grip sharp enough to bruise, but she tore herself free and stumbled backward toward the ladder. The movement above resumed instantly. Whatever was on the rungs descended faster now, each creak of wood snapping like a bone under strain. Her father's double snarled, the sound warped, half human, half that dry, hollow rustling she'd heard from the trees. "You don't know what you're holding, Naomi. You think you can keep it from us?" The box pulsed again, heat blooming against her ribs, the carving shifting into something new. 2 opposing arrows, locked point to point. She didn't know why, but it made her chest tighten. The pale hands reached the bottom of the ladder. In the weak light, Naomi finally saw the face leaning down toward her. It was hers, but drained of color, lips split in a too wide smile, eyes flat and unblinking. Her voice, her exact voice, spoke from that pale double. "Give it to me, Naomi. I'm the only one you can trust." Her father's double moved in from behind. The space between them was closing fast. The box in her arms burned hotter, the symbols shifting so rapidly they blurred. Naomi realized with a jolt that the opposing arrows weren't just a symbol. They were a choice. 2 directions, 2 fates, no middle ground, and she had seconds left to decide which way to turn.
Naomi's pulse pounded in her ears. The air between her and the 2 figures felt charged, like the thick electric stillness before a lightning strike. Her pale double crouched at the base of the ladder, tilting its head in a way that made the smile stretch wider. Her father's double loomed just behind her, close enough that she could feel the cold radiating off him. The box vibrated violently now, the heat so intense she thought her skin might blister. The arrows in its carvings pulsed in alternating flashes, left, right, each beat syncing with her heartbeat until it was impossible to tell which was hers and which belonged to the thing in her arms. Her father's double leaned close, his breath damp against her ear. "One way and you survive. The other," his voice deepened into something that scraped like stone, "you'll be with us forever." Her pale double's voice chimed in, eerily soft. "Choose me, and we'll make sure no one else has to carry it. You've suffered enough." The arrows flashed faster. The box's hum filled her skull, drowning out even the sound of the rain. Naomi's hands trembled, not from indecision, but from the raw, unbearable energy building in the wood. She understood now. She wasn't just choosing who would hold the box. She was choosing who would become the box. Her pale double smile widened further, teeth now crowding unnaturally in her mouth. Her father's double shifted behind her, his hand flexing slowly, ready to seize her the moment she faltered. Naomi's breath caught. She only had 1 heartbeat left before the box forced her choice for her. She turned toward the pale double.
The thing's grin twitched, almost faltering in surprise before sharpening into something ravenous. Naomi shoved the box hard against its chest, the heat between them flaring so bright she swore she saw light spilling from the seams in her fingers. The pale double's arms closed greedily around it. For a single disorienting moment, Naomi felt her own heartbeat inside the other body, pounding in perfect sync. Then the box began to drink. The double's smile froze. Its eyes went wide, not in fear, but in realization, as the carvings lit up and the heat turned to a violent pull drawing inward. Its features started to unravel, strips of skin peeling like wet paper, revealing the shifting black beneath. The father double hissed behind her, lunging, but the force pulling from the box caught him too. His hands shot forward, grasping at the pale double, and in that instant they fused, two hollow forms thrashing together as the box devoured them both. The air in the hallway bent and warped, the walls bowing inward as if the space itself were being sucked into the vortex between those arrows. Naomi stumbled back, shielding her face from the blinding light. A final deafening crack split the air. The hallway went still. The doubles were gone. The ladder to the attic stood empty. Naomi looked down. The box was back in her arms, cold again, silent. But this time, the arrows in its carvings were gone, and in their place was a single, unbroken circle.
Naomi stared at the circle carved into the wood, tracing its smooth lines with her thumb. Unlike the shifting symbols before, it didn't move or pulse. It was fixed, perfect, closed. The box was lighter now, almost weightless, but the stillness of it made her skin crawl. The house was silent, too silent. No breathing from the trees, no tapping from above. Even the rain outside had faded to nothing, as if the world had stepped back and was waiting for her next move. She turned slowly toward the attic ladder. Empty. No sign of her pale double. No sound from the darkness above. For a heartbeat, she thought it was over. Then the boards beneath her feet gave a subtle shudder. Not the whole floor, just one spot, directly below where she stood. The shudder came again, stronger this time, and a faint thump rose from beneath the floorboards. Her grandmother's voice, low, hoarse, spoke from under her feet. "Naomi, let me out." Naomi's throat tightened. She'd seen her grandmother's body in the attic. She'd watched the tall figure take her. Thump. "It's so dark down here, Naomi. You can open the circle." Her gaze dropped to the box in her hands. The carved circle seemed deeper now, as though the wood were softening around it, inviting her thumb to press. Thump. This time it came from the hallway behind her. Naomi froze, her breath shallow. The thumps came again, one beneath her feet, one from behind, almost in sync, like something moving under the floor and the walls at the same time. Her grandmother's voice shifted, closer now, as if it were just over her shoulder. "The circle keeps me in, Naomi, but it keeps you in too." She turned sharply. The hallway was empty, but the shadows seemed thicker, the air heavier. The box in her hands felt warmer again, the carved circle no longer smooth. Its edges were starting to ripple, breaking apart into tiny cracks. Another thump, louder this time, from the far end of the hall. Naomi backed toward the staircase, eyes darting between the empty ladder to the attic and the dark hallway stretching ahead. Her grandmother's voice followed, weaving itself into the creak of the boards. You can open it for me. I'll make sure they don't hurt you. You won't have to run anymore."
Naomi's grip tightened.
"You're not her," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. The circle in the carvings began to turn, not shifting like the old symbols, but rotating slowly, impossibly, as though the wood were a gear winding itself open. The next thump rattled the glass in the picture frames on the wall. From the base of the staircase came a whisper now, low, layered, dozens of voices stacked together. "Open it!" Naomi's heel hit the first step, and something moved in the dark below. The movement below was slow, deliberate, a shadow peeling itself away from the darker space beneath the staircase. Naomi's breath caught as it stretched upward, too tall to be human, its limbs bending in ways that made her stomach twist. The circle on the box spun faster now, each rotation sending a faint vibration through her arms. She could hear something inside it, not a voice, but the sound of breathing, steady and patient. The figure at the bottom of the stairs began to climb. Its steps were silent, but the boards groaned under its weight, each creak long and drawn out, like the house itself was protesting. Her grandmother's voice whispered again, but closer now, almost inside her head. "If you open it, you'll never have to see them again. You'll be safe." The tall shape kept coming, its head tilted just enough for her to see the smooth, featureless expanse where a face should be. No eyes, no mouth, just skin stretched impossibly flat. Naomi's thumb hovered over the spinning circle. The air around her felt charged, as if every choice she had left was folding into this moment. From the hallway behind her came another sound, a dragging, wet scrape, like bare feet pulling through mud. Two shapes now, one closing in from below, one from behind. The box pulsed in her hands, and the spinning slowed, waiting. She realized with a sick certainty that whatever she chose, she was going to let something out. And both things wanted to be first. Naomi's chest tightened until each breath felt like it might splinter her ribs. The tall figure on the stairs had stopped just 3 steps below her, its head cocked in a way that made the smooth expanse of its face catch the dim light, pale and glossy like porcelain. Behind her, the dragging sound in the hallway grew wetter, closer, accompanied now by the faint squelch of something stepping in and out of shallow water. The box in her arms thrummed with low, steady pulses, like a heartbeat in slow motion. The carved circle had nearly stopped spinning, and with every fraction of its turn, the air grew heavier, pressing against her from all sides. The voice that claimed to be her grandmother's shifted in tone, losing the soft coaxing it had used before. Now it was sharper, urgent. "Naomi, open it for me! They'll take you if you don't!" The tall figure tilted its head further, as if listening, and then, finally, it moved. One long arm reached out toward her, the skin at the elbow bending in a full reverse joint. Naomi staggered back a step, her heel catching the next stair up. The box pulsed harder. From the hallway behind her came another sound, a dragging, wet scrape, like bare feet pulling through mud. 2 shapes now, one closing in from below, one from behind. The box stopped spinning. Naomi knew, in a sudden, gut-deep flash of understanding, that if she didn't decide in the next breath, the box would decide for her. Naomi's throat burned as she dragged in a breath that tasted like dust and rain. The tall figure's hand was inches from her now, its unnaturally long fingers curling as if already shaping to her throat. Behind her, the wet, dragging steps were so close she could hear water dripping onto the floorboards.
The box gave one long, heavy pulse, an inhale before a scream. Her thumb hovered over the carved circle. She could feel it now, like a living eye under the wood, aware of her hesitation. The tall figure froze mid-reach, as if sensing the choice was about to be made. From behind, the other presence quickened its pace, the dragging sound turning into a wet, urgent shuffle. The voices came at once, overlapping in her head. "Open it for me. Now, before it's too late. Naomi, don't let the other have it." The air seemed to split in two around her, pulled taut like fabric ready to tear. Her hand dropped. The circle cracked open. A surge of black light, if it could be called light, erupted from the box, expanding outward in a wave that bent the air. The tall figure on the stairs jerked backward as if yanked by an unseen hook. The presence behind her let out a sound like 100 voices gasping at once before it too was swept into the swirling dark. The force caught Naomi as well. For a heartbeat, she felt herself pulled toward the box's gaping center, her vision collapsing into its depthless black. And then she was standing in the yard, alone. The house behind her was gone. The rain had stopped. The air was still, thick with the smell of wet soil and something faintly metallic. Naomi turned in place, the box clutched tight to her chest. Where the house had been, there was only a bare patch of churned earth, dark and slick, like something had been freshly dug up and then swallowed back into the ground. The trees loomed taller now, their branches knitted so tightly overhead that the daylight barely touched the yard. She realized with a slow, sick twist of her stomach that she couldn't hear anything. Not wind, not birds, not the faint hum of distant roads, just her own breathing. The box in her arms was cold again, heavier than before, the carved circle now completely sealed as if it had never opened at all. She took a step toward the tree line, her boots sunk deep into the mud, the ground too soft, as if the earth itself had been disturbed far beneath the surface. A flicker of movement caught her eye. At first, she thought it was a shadow shifting between the trunks, but then it stepped forward into the half-light, a pale figure, tall and thin, its head cocked to one side. It wasn't one of the hollow ones. Its limbs were the right length, its movements almost human. Almost. It raised a hand, palm out, and when it spoke, its voice was her own. "You've brought it through." The box pulsed once in her hands. Not a warning, an acknowledgement. Naomi's fingers tightened around the box until her knuckles ached. "Brought it through where?" she asked, but her voice came out thin, almost swallowed by the still air. The figure tilted its head farther, the motion sharp and bird-like. "Here," it said, as though that explained everything. It stepped closer, the mud sucking at its feet with each movement. Its skin was too smooth, too uniform, like it had been poured from wax and left to harden. Only the faintest traces of human features, suggestions of cheekbones, the outline of lips, hinted at a face. Naomi took a step back. "What are you?" The thing didn't answer. Instead, it glanced at the box in her arms. "It's open, even when you think it's shut. You can't close what's been carried over." The carved circle felt heavier under her thumb, as though it had gained depths she couldn't see. Naomi swallowed. "Then tell me what happens now." It didn't blink. "Now?" It leaned forward slightly. "Now they come looking for what you took from them." The box warmed in her grip, not a burn, but the kind of heat that seeps into bone. Naomi's stomach turned cold. And if they find me? The figure smiled then, small, precise, and horribly human. Then they wear you, Naomi, like a coat. Behind it, the shadows between the trees began to move. The movement was subtle at first, just a ripple among the shadows, like wind stirring leaves, but there was no wind. Naomi's breath hitched as more shapes began to emerge from the darkness between the trees. They weren't rushing toward her. They didn't have to. Each one moved with a slow inevitability, pale bodies weaving between the trees, their faces shifting in and out of focus. Sometimes human, sometimes blank, sometimes a stranger she swore she'd never seen. The wax-skinned figure in front of her didn't move aside. Instead, it stepped closer until they were only a few feet apart. The heat from the box seeped into her arms as if it were reacting to their proximity. "They won't cross into this place while I stand here," it said, voice still wearing her own tone like a perfectly fitted mask. "But I can't stand forever." The carved circle throbbed once beneath her thumb, and Naomi felt a jolt in her chest, a thread pulling taut between her and the advancing shapes. She realized, with a sick twist of clarity, that they weren't coming for the figure in front of her. They were coming for her. The wax-skinned thing leaned closer, lowering its voice. "You have one choice left, and you know what it is." Her throat felt tight. "Open it again?" The figure's faint smile deepened. "Or run and see how far you get before the coat fits." The shapes in the tree line had stopped now, all standing perfectly still, their heads tilted in unison, waiting. The box warmed again, inviting.
Naomi's grip tightened until her nails scraped the carvings. The warmth from the box was steady now, almost rhythmic, like a heartbeat she wasn't sure was hers. The wax-skinned figure didn't blink. "Choose," it said softly. Naomi glanced past it to the tree line. The hollow ones stood in a loose semicircle, pale bodies half hidden by the dripping branches. Even from here, she could see the slow, synchronized rise and fall of their breathing. Her mind raced. If she opened the box here, she might pull them in or let something else out. But if she ran, she already knew they would follow. The ground beneath her felt too soft, too ready to give way, like it might swallow her the second she moved. The wax-skinned figure stepped even closer. Close enough now that Naomi could see faint cracks in its waxy surface, hairline fractures running from the corner of its mouth toward its jaw. "It doesn't matter which choice you make," it whispered. "It only matters that you make it. Waiting just feeds them." The box pulsed sharply, almost impatient. From the tree line, one of the hollow ones shifted forward, its body moving in a jerky, stuttering gait. Then another followed. The figure between them and Naomi didn't turn to stop them this time. Instead, it stepped aside, its head tilting as if to watch what she would do. The nearest hollow one's face began to change. It was becoming hers. Naomi's breath caught. Watching her own face emerge on that pale, unnatural body felt worse than seeing the faceless ones. It was like staring at a corpse that had learned to smile. The double blinked once, too slow, the lid sticking slightly before sliding open again. Then it spoke in her voice, each word stretched like a wire pulled too tight. "If you don't open it, I will." The other hollow ones began to sway in unison, their bodies tilting side to side in a slow, deliberate rhythm. Every movement was perfectly timed, as though they were all listening to the same silent command.
The box grew heavier in Naomi's hands, the carved circle warming, until she swore she could feel her pulse echoing inside it. She knew, just knew, that if her double touched the box, it would be over. Not just for her, but for everything. The wax-skinned figure still stood off to the side, arms loose at its sides, watching like a spectator at a game. It's already wearing you, Naomi. You just haven't noticed where yet. The double took another step forward. Its eyes caught the weak light and glinted, not with reflection, but with something moving beneath the surface, like shadows swimming in deep water. Naomi's throat tightened. She could run. She could open the box. She could... The box pulsed, hard enough to jolt her arms. She realized with a cold clarity that the moment she hesitated again, the choice would be made for her.
Naomi's mind burned with panic. The double's footsteps squelched softly in the wet earth, slow but deliberate, closing the gap between them. Every step it took seemed to match her own heartbeat, a rhythm she couldn't break. The other hollow ones remained just inside the tree line, swaying, their faces flickering between blank smoothness and fleeting, stolen expressions. Each time her double moved, their sway became sharper, more eager, like they were all leaning into her choice. The wax-skinned figure tilted its head, voice low, but cutting through the stillness. The circle is only a lock, if you believe it is. Break it, and it becomes a door again. The carved circle under Naomi's thumb was hot enough to sting now, the faint scent of scorched wood curling into the damp air. She knew it was waiting, no, urging her to press down. Her double's face was only inches away now, a perfect copy, save for the smile, which was too wide, too certain. You know you can't carry it forever, it said, in her voice, the inflection perfect, but hollow beneath. Naomi's legs felt locked in place, as if the mud had risen around her ankles. Her grip tightened until her knuckles ached. The wax-skinned figure spoke again, almost gently. One choice, Naomi. You or it. Her double reached for the box. Naomi's thumb pressed into the circle. The carved circle sank beneath her thumb with a sound like splintering ice. The air around Naomi folded inward, pulling hard enough to bow the trees toward her. Her double smile faltered for the first time, its hand freezing inches from the box. The hollow ones in the tree line snapped upright, their synchronized swaying breaking into sharp, jerking movements. A black light, dense and liquid, spilled from the circle, curling upward in thick tendrils. It didn't rush out like before. It crept, deliberate and controlled, as though tasting the air. Naomi's double tried to speak, but its voice came out wrong, warped, too deep, echoing with layers of other voices beneath her own. The shadows swimming in its eyes began to churn violently. The box pulsed once, and the tendrils lashed out. They struck her double first, wrapping around its wrists, its neck, pulling it closer to the box. The copy fought, its body twisting unnaturally, but the tendrils sank deeper, peeling away its stolen skin like wet paper. The hollow ones at the edge of the trees began to shudder, their faces flickering in and out of shape as if the connection between them was fraying. The wax-skinned figure didn't move. It just watched, that faint, unreadable smile still etched on its face. The double let out a final distorted wail before it collapsed inward, folding into itself until it was swallowed completely by the black. The tendrils hesitated, hanging in the air between Naomi and the tree line. Then they began to spread outward, toward the others. The hollow ones didn't retreat this time. They started walking toward her.
The hollow ones advanced in jerky, uneven strides, their movements no longer synchronized. Faces flickered faster now. Neighbors, strangers, glimpses of Naomi herself at different ages, all sliding across their pale forms like masks being tried on and discarded. The tendrils from the box quivered as if sensing fresh prey. They stretched toward the first of the hollow ones, brushing across its face. The skin dissolved on contact, revealing the black, glassy surface beneath before the tendril pulled it inward, consuming it piece by piece. Another hollow one lunged forward. Naomi staggered back, but the tendril struck it too, binding its limbs and dragging it closer. The sound wasn't screaming. It was a wet, sucking noise, like air being pulled through waterlogged wood. But there were too many of them. 3 more broke through the line of trees, their faces already shifting to versions of her grandmother, her father, even the pale double she had just destroyed. The tendrils whipped faster, catching one, then another, but for every one the box consumed, more closed the gap. Naomi's arms ached from gripping the box, its heat now searing into her chest through her coat. The wax-skinned figure finally moved, stepping closer until it was at her side. "You can keep feeding it," it said, voice calm despite the chaos. "But the more you give it, the hungrier it gets. Eventually, it will want you." One of the hollow ones lunged forward. Naomi had to choose whether to step back, closer to the trees, or let the box take it. Naomi didn't step back. The hollow one's outstretched hand came within inches of her face before a tendril whipped around its wrist and yanked it sideways. The thing's stolen skin unraveled in strips, snapping away like ribbons caught in a gale, until it was pulled screaming into the black light. But the sound of its loss only seemed to ignite the others. They surged forward in a staggering rush, pale limbs and flickering faces tumbling toward her like a wave of broken marionettes. The tendrils lashed faster, striking 2, 3 at a time, but each victory only drew more from the trees. The carved circle under her thumb burned hot enough now that she smelled the charred fibers of her coat. The box's pulses were stronger, harder, pounding against her ribs as if it was urging her to surrender completely and let it feed without restraint. The wax-skinned figure didn't move to help. It simply stood there, watching the chaos. "You can keep feeding it," it said. "Every one you feed it brings more. It's not a gate anymore, Naomi. It's a beacon." The truth of that statement cut through her panic. The box wasn't just taking them, it was calling to them. From deeper in the woods, more hollow ones began to emerge. Dozens, maybe more. Their faces all wore hers now. The tendril swayed toward them, eager. The wax-skinned figure leaned close, its voice like a whisper through a locked door. "Or you can feed it something bigger." Naomi's hands tightened on the box. "What?" The figure's faint smile deepened. "Me."
Naomi blinked at the figure, unsure if she'd heard it right. "You?" The wax-skinned figure didn't flinch. Up close, she could see the cracks in its surface more clearly now. Fine fissures spidering out from its eyes, its mouth, down its neck. Inside those cracks, something darker swirled, as if there was no flesh beneath, only shadow. Its voice carried a strange calm. "I'm not one of them."
but I was made from the same place. If the box takes me, it will pull everything connected to me with it." Naomi's gaze flicked to the tree line. The hollow ones had slowed their approach, as if sensing this exchange. They stood just beyond reach, twitching, watching. Every face was hers now, hundreds of identical smiles in the dim light. The tendrils writhed impatiently in the air, still clutching scraps of blackened skin from the ones they'd consumed. The box's heat was unbearable. Her palms felt raw where the wood burned into them. "Why would you offer that?" she asked, suspicion sharpening her tone. The figure tilted its head, the motion slow and deliberate. "Because either way, I end. This way, I take them with me. And you keep walking." Naomi hesitated. She didn't trust it, not fully, but she could feel the truth in its words, heavy and cold. The hollow ones began to creep forward again. The figure took a single step closer to her, placing itself within reach of the tendrils. Its waxy smile was faint, almost weary. "Do it now before they reach you." The box pulsed hard against her ribs. It wanted a decision. Naomi lifted her thumb from the circle. The tendrils reacted instantly. They snapped toward the wax-skinned figure like striking snakes, coiling around its arms, legs, and neck in a blur of black light. The figure didn't resist. Instead, it stood perfectly still, eyes fixed on Naomi, that faint, weary smile never wavering. The hollow ones froze mid-step, their heads jerking toward the figure in unison. A ripple passed through them, as if some invisible thread connecting them had gone taut. The tendrils tightened. The cracks in the figure's waxy surface deepened, spreading until chunks of its skin began to slough away, revealing the shifting darkness beneath. That darkness pulsed in time with the box, the rhythm quickening. The figure's voice was calm, but there was an undertone now, something ancient, something vast. "When it takes me, it will take the path they follow. You'll have time, Naomi. Use it." The hollow ones began to twitch violently, their faces flickering faster than Naomi could track. Her own expression flashing again and again, distorted, stretched, broken. The box's pull intensified, dragging the figure closer. As the tendrils reeled it in, the shadow inside it began to spill outward, touching the air like oil on water. Wherever it spread, the hollow ones recoiled, their forms distorting, as though the very space around them had turned toxic. Naomi's grip tightened on the box. "Will you come back?" she asked, not sure if she wanted the answer to be yes or no. The smile widened just slightly. Doors open both ways. Then the tendrils yanked, and the figure collapsed inward, pulled into the box in a rush of black light that blotted out everything for an instant. When the light cleared, the hollow ones were gone, and Naomi was standing alone in the silent yard, the box cold and heavy in her arms.
The silence pressed in so thickly that Naomi's ears rang. No rustle of leaves, no drip of water from the branches overhead. Even her own breathing sounded muffled, as though the air had been padded. She looked down at the box. The carved circle was still there, but something about it had changed. It was no longer perfectly smooth. Faint hairline fractures marred its surface, tiny lines that caught the dim light like cracks in old porcelain. Her fingers hovered over them, but she didn't touch. The box was ice cold now, its weight oddly balanced, as if whatever had been inside was gone, or waiting. The trees stood silent at the edge of the yard. They looked ordinary again, no pale shapes lurking between their trunks. But the longer she stared, the less sure she was.
The shadows there seemed a little too deep, the stillness a little too deliberate. Naomi took a cautious step toward the porch. The mud sucked softly at her boots, but there was no echo of movement behind her, no breathing at her back. She climbed the steps, pausing at the threshold where the front door used to be. The house was still gone, just empty space where its walls should have been, the churned earth stretching flat and bare. Yet when she looked down at her boots, she saw she was standing on wood. A single plank, weathered, warped, and it was pulsing. Not fast, not loud, just a steady, patient beat. The same rhythm as the box. Naomi's stomach knotted as the vibration traveled up through her boots, a faint but deliberate rhythm that seemed to sync with her own pulse. She stepped back instinctively, yet the beat followed, thrumming through the ground itself. The yard around her was wrong now. The tree line, the sky, even the air felt stretched thin, like a painted backdrop that might peel away if she touched it. And beneath it all, under the mud and roots, something vast and slow was moving. The box remained cold in her arms, but the cracks along the carved circle deepened, tiny flakes of wood breaking free like dried skin. She didn't need to open it to know it was aware of her, watching her. From the trees, a voice rose, her own voice, but softer, farther away. "It's not over, Naomi. It never is." The shadows between the trunks shifted, though she couldn't tell if anything was really there. Her grip on the box tightened until her fingers ached. The plank beneath her boots pulsed one last time, hard enough to rattle her teeth, then stilled. Naomi stood frozen, scanning the silent yard. Nothing moved. But when she looked down at the box, the cracks in the circle had arranged themselves into a new shape. A keyhole.